Okay, this actually the first earthquake of magnitude 7.8 earthquake, which is a very large earthquake, happened about 80 kilometers away from Kathmandu Valley. Kathmandu is a capital city. The whole valley is about 2.7, 2.8 million people. The number of people affected is about 8 million. So it's not as big as Metro Manila, of course, but it's a major, fast-growing city with a very high vulnerability and has the same type of problems as you see here in Manila. Nepal is a very poor country, extremely poor country. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. Then just on May 12th, there were several aftershocks after the main shocks, but then we had another major earthquake, a magnitude 7.4 earthquake, which again is a major earthquake that happened on May 12th. So I'll explain the relevance of this later in the discussion, but this just set the stage. Here's the major event. This does not represent the aftershock, but it shows several aftershocks happening, including the 6.8 magnitude earthquake. And the effect of aftershocks is very, very unique for earthquakes. If you talk about a typhoon, you talk about a flood, it comes, goes away, and then there is no more threat. In earthquake, aftershock create major trauma and major difficulties in terms of managing the disaster itself. Next, please. So this is just the headlines. About 8 million people were affected. The whole country has 75 districts, 39 of those were affected, but now they say 57 districts are affected because of the other earthquake that happened on the other side of Kathmandu. So more than half or 2/3 of the districts in the country were affected. 8,000 people so far, plus were killed. We expect that to probably reach around 10,000. 18,000 people injured. 600,000 buildings were damaged. And in the district near the epicenter, there were villages and small cities where the collapse was 90%, and even some cases 100% of all the structures were damaged. Okay. So this is a distribution of the intensity of the losses. Kathmandu is here. You see the capital city was not that much affected by the earthquake compared to the villages. This is the Himalayas, so very quickly from the Kathmandu Valley, you're going into the hills and you're going into the mountains. And that creates specific difficulties because there was a tremendous amount of landslides and avalanches that cut essentially the logistics of reaching. And the next please, I have to speed up. So this is just a very difficult picture. It's a satellite picture of a village where you see essentially 100% loss. This is what happened near the epicenter. So everybody there has either died or is a victim, needs for shelter. This is typical of what's happening in Kathmandu. The damage was relatively lighter compared to what the expectations were from previous studies that were done, but many collapses. What I said, listen, learn this type of damages, this type of collapses. This is a school building that has lost 2 floors, are very common. We see that over and over again for the last 40, 50 years. We keep building structures that are deficient, and we don't learn that much. But here's what goes beyond the headlines that we don't see in the news or very little in the news, and give a sense about what happens in a mega city, what are the real impacts that are different than just a typical disaster. 72% of the financial sector is seated in the most affected area of Kathmandu. So already your financial sector, which is basis for essentially all your transactions, is severely affected. 70% of the public buildings are in the most affected area. 67% of the communications providers are in the most affected area. 71 to 86% of the institutions on the field of education and health services are in the most affected area. You see the core services that make a city work, that makes a life in a mega city work, are disabled. So beyond what we see in the news in terms of how many people, it's this long-term effect that we don't know very well in terms of when an earthquake hit a large urban area. what are the impacts of those that we would like to focus on today and hopefully have some good discussion around. So the financial sector contributes, of course, to other sectors. And by the nature of the financial sector being out, other sectors also suffer. So you have a slowdown in the whole economy of the country and a difficulty in terms of recovery because the core sectors are out. Okay. 39% of key economic sectors are located somewhere in the damaged area. So beyond the financial sector, beyond the communication sector, the government, the business, you also have other key sectors that are affected. And that makes the whole process of the domino effect. There is detrimental effect even on areas that were not affected because of the fact that government has difficulty functioning, that the whole economy has difficulty restarting and functioning again. So life is, the point here is now in megacities and in large cities, things are interconnected. You know, when something fails, there are major impacts on others. Next. Again, beyond the headlines, we talked about the healthcare system. 26 hospitals have been damaged by the earthquake, and 900 smaller healthcare facilities were not functional. 3.5 million people are in need for food, including 1.4 million in the most affected which need food right away. And this impacted also the agriculture sector in terms of planting new crops, and the attendance to the agriculture sector is only 9% of the needs that they have. So that means future impact on future food supply and food security beyond this year. And the government has closed school at least until May 29th. Next, please. So if we look at economic impact, you know, and you add up all this effect, which before we really didn't pay attention to, like what is it that we need to add up. You know, now the total economic impact is about $10 billion, which is 50% of the GDP of the country, wiped out by one single event. So the direct impact, when we count, typically we count building losses and infrastructure losses, they account maybe at maximum 4 billion, but then you have all the secondary impacts that are even higher. 1.5 billion estimated on production and equipment loss. 2.5 to 3 billion on life costs, meaning the fact that you lose people, that they die, there is an impact on the economy, there's an impact on communities, there's an impact on the productivity of the country. Okay? And $2 to $4 billion in indirect costs by the fact that the major sectors of the economy have been severely impacted. So this is very quickly, you know, we know a lot at EMI about Kathmandu because we worked there. We did a lot of work from 2005 to 2010 or 2011. We built essentially a disaster master plan for Kathmandu. We developed a risk-sensitive land use plan for Kathmandu. We built the infrastructure for disaster management for Kathmandu city, the city itself. And we did a lot of capacity building. So there's some similarities in terms of kind of what happened which is what I would like to emphasize. Next, please. This you can skip this. We'll have to move on. This the activities that we have done in Kathmandu. You know, a lot of studies were done. It's just very similar situation as here. There was a flagship program by all the donors that went on from 2010 to 2015. Millions of dollars were done in terms of educating, in terms of understanding risk, in terms of introducing new, strengthening institutions, building capacity within communities. Very similar type of effort. In fact, if you go to Nepal, it's such a poor country, development partners, UN institutions have very important role. And that also has reflected in the way the country reacted to the earthquake. And if I compare Nepal 10 years ago, and if this earthquake happened 10 years ago, there would have been complete chaos. And what happened now is they were able to manage the chaos, which is very important. There will always be chaos in megacity, but having the ability to manage the chaos is a first goal. It's the first goal. So this is just some of the reports. So there's quite a bit of documentation actually there, and they're trained on the incident command system. They understand the incident command system, how it is, how these institutions have reacted, how they were able to put in place the preparedness effort is really the big question that we have to ask. And we learn from these things, and also Monsanto is here. He actually just came back, he said, well, yesterday, he took the MMDA team there, so he can tell us maybe some, his own, first-hand, his observations, what he observed there. And so, as I said, we have made significant progress here. We have done a lot of studies, thanks to many institutions such as PBOX and others. There's a lot of preparedness activities. We have, next please. We have good knowledge. There was, this MMDA had a drill on September 9 when 6,000 employees were involved. This is what I picked up from the news. Next, we have, of course, the military has its own plan, MMDA has a plan, OCD has a plan. How are all these plans going to hold? How are we going to make sure that we learn and see how best we can do? Because what we, as was pointed out by Director Soydom, fortunately, earthquakes are rare. And earthquakes hitting big megacities are a rare opportunity for us to learn. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. That's how we have learned. And because we don't have institutional memory, we don't have community's experience in earthquakes. Okay. So the only good opportunity for us to learn is to see what happened on a global scene, collect that experience, collect those lessons, and review what we have done to improve it. So that's essentially what we would like to talk about today. That set the stage, hope for all of you to. We'll come back later. We'll have some presentations and focus on particular topics. And we can't, of course, do everything. We cannot deal with everything, but hopefully through the audience and the experience from the audience, there will be an informative discussion at the end. Thank you.